He didn't just insult her, he slapped her, a pregnant teacher, in front of everyone, and for a second, the whole room went silent. Because she didn't cry, she didn't react, she just stood there, calm, like she knew something he didn't. Then her phone rang, and that's when everything changed, because the man on the other end was someone you don't disrespect and live to forget. The classroom was quiet, too quiet for a place meant to hold children, not because it was empty, but because no one was speaking, not the students, not the staff, not even the man standing at the center of the room. Kang Jun-hyuk didn't belong there. Everything about him made that clear. The suit, perfectly tailored, the watch, worth more than the entire school building, the presence, heavy, controlled, dangerous. He stood like a man who didn't ask for space. He took it, and right now, all of it belonged to him. Across from him stood Amina, 7 months pregnant, a teacher. Her hands rested protectively over her stomach, fingers trembling just slightly, not out of weakness, but restraint, because she knew something the others didn't. Men like him didn't come here for conversation. "You think you can ignore me?" Jun-hyuk asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The room felt smaller just hearing it. Amina held his gaze. "I didn't ignore you," she said calmly. "I refused you." That was the first mistake. Or at least, that's what everyone in the room thought. A few students shifted uncomfortably. A teacher near the door looked away, because people like Jun-hyuk weren't used to being refused, especially not by someone like her. "You refused me," he repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words, deciding whether they offended him or amused him. "I asked for a private meeting," he continued. "You said no." "I said it wasn't appropriate," Amina replied, still calm, still steady, and somehow that made it worse. His eyes darkened slightly, not anger, something colder. "You work in a building I own," he said. A pause. "You stand in a room I paid for." Another step forward. "And you think you get to decide what's appropriate?" The silence tightened. Everyone felt it. That line had been crossed. Amina didn't move, didn't step back, didn't lower her gaze. "I teach children," she said quietly, "not entertain men with power." That was the second mistake, because this time, something changed. Not in the room, in him. The air shifted, heavy, sharp, dangerous. "You talk too much," he said. And before anyone could react, his hand moved, fast, precise. The sound echoed louder than it should have, a sharp crack across the room. Amina's head turned slightly from the impact. Her body swayed, but she didn't fall. The room froze. No one breathed, no one spoke. Because now, it wasn't just tension. It was fear, real fear. Jun-hyuk lowered his hand slowly, like nothing had happened, like it meant nothing. "You'll learn," he said calmly. But something was wrong. Not with her, with him. Because the moment she straightened, something didn't match. She wasn't crying, she wasn't angry, she wasn't even surprised. She was looking at him, directly, calmly, almost patiently. And that didn't make sense. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly. No fear, no panic, just truth. For the first time, Jun-hyuk paused, not visibly, but internally. Something about her tone didn't fit. It didn't belong to someone powerless. It didn't belong to someone alone. It sounded like someone who already knew what came next. The door opened. Not loudly, but enough. Every head turned. A man stepped in. Simple clothes, nothing flashy, nothing expensive. But the moment he entered, everything changed. Not the room, the atmosphere. It dropped, like pressure before a storm. Jun-hyuk didn't turn immediately. He didn't need to. He felt it. That shift, that presence, slowly. He looked, and for the first time since he walked into that room, his expression changed. Not anger, not arrogance, recognition, then something deeper, something rare, stillness, because the man standing at the door wasn't just anyone. He walked forward calmly, each step measured, controlled, like a man who didn't need permission to enter any room or end anything inside it. "Amina," he said quietly. Her eyes softened slightly. "I'm fine," she replied. That was enough. He nodded once. Then his gaze moved, landed on Junhyuk, locked, unmoving. "You hit her," he said. Not a question, a fact. The room held its breath, because now they understood. This wasn't about status anymore. This wasn't about wealth. This was something else. Junhyuk didn't speak, didn't move, because he knew exactly who he was looking at. And that was the problem. The man in front of him was someone even men like him avoided. "You shouldn't have done that," the man repeated. Same words, different weight, and suddenly the power in the room shifted, not slowly, not gradually, instantly, because for the first time, the man who controlled everything had nothing to say, and the teacher everyone thought was weak was never alone. No one moved, not the students, not the teachers. Not even the guards who had followed Junhyuk in, because something had just changed in the room, and everyone felt it. Junhyuk slowly straightened his sleeve, a small movement, controlled, deliberate, but it wasn't confidence, it was calculation, because men like him didn't panic. They adjusted. "You walked into the wrong place," he said finally. Calm, measured, but not as steady as before. The man didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Instead, he took another step.
If you really enjoyed this video, kindly subscribe below to be seeing more fascinating videos like this from us. Thank you.
Step forward, closer, too close. "Amina," he said again, softer this time. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slightly. "I'm fine." But her hand remained on her stomach, protective, instinctive, and that was enough. The man's eyes darkened, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that made the air feel heavier. "You hit her," he repeated. Still not a question, still not loud, but now there was something under it, something colder. Junhyuk's jaw tightened. "You don't understand the situation," he said. And that was his mistake, because the moment those words left his mouth, a few of the guards shifted, uncomfortable, like they had heard something they shouldn't. The man tilted his head slightly. "Just a fraction." "I understand enough," he replied. A pause, then, "You raised your hand." Silence, thick, heavy, unforgiving. Junhyuk exhaled slowly. "This is a private matter." "No," the man said. "Simple, immediate. It's not." Another step forward. Now they stood face to face. Power meeting power, but not the same kind. Junhyuk had money, influence, control, but the man in front of him had something else. Something harder to measure. Something people didn't talk about because they were afraid to. "You should leave," Junhyuk said. Not a threat. Not yet. More like a test. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked around the room, at the students, at the staff, at the silence, then back at him. "You did this here?" That question landed differently, because now it wasn't just about Amina, it was about witnesses, reputation, exposure. And that was dangerous. Junhyuk's expression hardened. "You're stepping into something bigger than you think." A faint pause. Then, "You're right." That answer caught him off guard, because it wasn't defensive, it wasn't reactive, it was certain, and certainty was dangerous. The man stepped even closer, close enough that no one else could hear clearly. But everyone could feel it. "Do you know who she is?" he asked quietly. Junhyuk didn't answer, didn't need to, because in that moment, he realized something. He had assumed she was just a teacher, just a woman, just someone without power, and now that assumption was breaking. "She's my sister," the man said, simple, direct, final. The room didn't react, not outwardly, but inside. Everything shifted, because now it made sense. The calm, the confidence, the lack of fear. Jun Hyuk leaned back slightly, just enough to create space. Not retreat, never that, but distance, calculated. Then control her, he said. Wrong move. The air dropped, instantly, because that wasn't just arrogance anymore, that was disrespect, and this time, there was no patience left. The man's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did, something quiet, something final. You don't give me instructions, he said. Soft, deadly. The guards moved, not aggressively, but instinctively, because now they understood this wasn't stable anymore. This was seconds away from breaking. Jun Hyuk noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. And for the first time, he adjusted. Not his posture, not his voice, his approach. You want compensation? He asked. A pause. We can settle this. There it was. Money. The language he understood best. The solution that worked everywhere else. But not here. Not now. The man smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. You think this is about money? Another step closer. And that's your second mistake. The silence stretched. Longer this time, more dangerous, because now there was no misunderstanding left. Jun Hyuk wasn't in control anymore, and he knew it. He just hadn't decided what to do about it yet. Amina shifted slightly behind them. Stop, she said quietly. Both men paused, not because of force, but because of presence, because even now, she still held something in this moment. This isn't a street, she continued. There are children here. That word changed everything. Children, innocent, watching, learning. The man exhaled slowly. Some of the tension in his shoulders eased, just slightly, enough. You're right, he said. Then his eyes returned to Jun Hyuk. But this isn't over. Not loud, not dramatic, but absolute. Jun Hyuk held his gaze, and for the first time, he didn't respond immediately. Because he understood something now. This wasn't a situation he could dominate. This wasn't a person he could dismiss. This was a problem, a real one, and problems like this didn't disappear. They escalated. The man turned, walked back toward Amina. Gentler now, careful, like the danger had shifted away from her. We're leaving, he said. She nodded. But before they moved, she looked back. At Jun Hyuk. Not with fear, not with anger, but with something far more unsettling. Certainty. You should have listened, she said quietly. Then she turned and walked out. The room stayed silent long after they were gone, because no one needed to say it. Everyone already knew. That moment had changed everything. And somewhere deep inside, even Kang Jun Hyuk understood it. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had created something that wouldn't end quietly, something that would come back, stronger, closer, and next time, there wouldn't be a room full of witnesses. Immediately, even after the doors closed, even after the silence settled back into place, something still felt off, like the air itself had changed. Jun Hyuk stood where he was, unmoving, unbothered on the surface, but inside, his mind was already working, fast, precise, replaying everything, her words, her calm, that man, and most importantly, that moment, the moment he didn't control. That was the problem. Clear the room, he said. No emotion, no hesitation. The teachers moved first, quick, quiet, gathering the students, avoiding eye contact because no one wanted to be remembered. Not today, not here. Within seconds, the classroom was empty, except for him and his men. One of them stepped forward carefully. Sir, should we? No. Sharp, immediate. That answer came faster than anything else he had said today, because this wasn't something you rushed. This wasn't something you handled like a normal problem. This required thought. Find out who he is, Jun Hyuk said. The guard hesitated, just slightly. Sir, we already know. That caught his attention. A slow turn. Then say it. The room tightened again, because now, even his own men were choosing their words carefully. It's Park Min-jae. Silence. Not confusion, not surprise, recognition. Jun Hyuk's eyes darkened, because that name meant something. Not in business, not in politics, something deeper, something quieter. Something people didn't say out loud. Are you sure? He asked. Yes. No hesitation this time. That's him. A long pause followed, because now, the situation had changed, completely. Park Min-jae, a name that didn't appear in headlines, didn't sit in boardrooms, didn't sign contracts, but still, controlled outcomes, and that made him dangerous. Very dangerous. Jun Hyuk exhaled slowly, then he smiled, not out of amusement, not out of confidence, but understanding. So that's why she didn't flinch, he said quietly. Everything made sense now, the calm, the confidence, the warning. She knew exactly who she could call, and that meant this wasn't random, this wasn't coincidence, this was connection. Pull everything on him, Jun Hyuk ordered. Background, movements, contacts, a pause. And I want it clean. Because men like Park Min-jae didn't leave obvious trails. They didn't need to. Sir, the guard added carefully, he doesn't usually get involved personally. Another pause, which made this worse. Because if a man like that shows up himself, it means something matters. And if it matters, it becomes unpredictable. Jun Hyuk turned toward the window. The city stretched out below, bright, busy, normal, but he knew better. Nothing was normal anymore. He will now, he said, calm, certain, because this wasn't over, not even close. Outside the school, Amina stepped into the car slowly, carefully, her hand still resting on her stomach, protective, always. Min-jae closed the door behind her, then walked around to the driver's side. He didn't rush, didn't speak immediately. Because he knew. Silence was sometimes better. The engine started, the car moved, and for a while, neither of them said anything. You came fast, she said finally, her voice soft but steady. I was close, he replied. A lie. A small one. But she didn't challenge it, because she knew him, and he knew her. You shouldn't have gotten involved, she added. That made him glance at her, briefly. Say that again, he said. Calm, but there was something under it, something firm. I can handle things, she said. You were hit. That ended it, because that wasn't something he was going to debate. Her fingers tightened slightly. I've dealt with worse. I don't care. Immediate. Final. That wasn't logic, that was instinct, and she recognized it, which made her look at him differently. For a moment. Just a moment. Things are going to get complicated now, she said. Yes. No hesitation. They won't let it go. No. Another pause. Because both of them understood something now. This wasn't a one-time incident. This was a beginning. And beginnings like this didn't end quietly. Amina leaned back slightly, exhaling. Then we deal with it, she said. Simple, like it was just another problem. Min-jae didn't respond immediately, because he was watching her, not as his sister, not just that, but as someone who had just stepped into something dangerous. Without hesitation. You didn't look surprised, he said. She turned slightly. What do you mean? In the room, he continued, when he hit you. A pause. You were calm. She looked out the window, the city passing by, lights blurring. I knew you'd come, she said. That answer sat differently, because it wasn't emotional, it wasn't dramatic, it was certain, and certainty like that came from trust. Deep trust. Min-jae looked back at the road, but something in his expression shifted, subtle, quiet but real. You shouldn't rely on that, he said. You showed up. I might not next time. Another lie, this one heavier, and she knew it. That's not true, she said softly. Silence followed. Because neither of them needed to argue. The truth was already there, unspoken, unmoving. And what about you? She asked after a moment. What about me? You're not just going to let this go. That wasn't a question. He didn't answer immediately, because the answer was obvious. No, he said. Quiet. Controlled. But I'm not rushing it either. Because this wasn't about anger, this wasn't about reaction, this was about timing, and timing was everything. He's powerful, she added. So am I. Not arrogance, just fact. But the difference was, their power worked differently. His was quiet, invisible, unpredictable, and that made it more dangerous. He won't expect that, she said. No. A faint pause. People like him never do. The car continued through the night, calm, silent. But beneath that silence, something was building, slowly, carefully, inevitably, because two worlds had just collided and neither one was going to step back. The city didn't sleep that night, it never did, but for Kang Jun-hyuk, the silence felt louder than usual. His office sat high above everything, glass walls, endless view. Total control. At least, that's what it used to feel like. Now, something was different. He stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass he hadn't touched, because his mind wasn't on the city. It was on one name, Park Min-jae. And one moment, the moment he paused, that didn't sit well with him. Sir. The voice came from behind. Jun-hyuk didn't turn. Talk. We've been trying to trace him. A pause. It's not straightforward. That almost made him smile. Nothing about him is, Jun-hyuk replied. His records are clean, too clean. No official businesses tied directly to him. No political position. Another pause. But people listened to him. That was the part that mattered. Power without a title, influence without exposure, danger without warning. Jun-hyuk finally turned. And his weakness? The room went quiet, because men like Min-jae didn't have obvious ones, not on paper. Family, the guard said carefully. A beat. His sister. There it was. Jun-hyuk's eyes lowered slightly, thinking, calculating, replaying the classroom again, her calm, her certainty, the way she said, I knew you'd come. A slow breath left him. Then, set something up. The guard stiffened slightly. Sir? Not an attack, Jun-hyuk clarified. Not yet. A pause. A message. Because real power didn't start with violence. It started with pressure. The next morning felt normal. Too normal. The school opened, students returned, teachers spoke in lower voices than usual, but everything looked the same. Except, it wasn't. Amina walked into her classroom slowly, her hand still resting lightly on her stomach, protective, always, but her eyes were different now, sharper, more aware, because she knew something was coming. It always did. She placed her bag down, took a breath, turned, and froze. A box sat on her desk, plain, simple, unmarked. It hadn't been there before. The room was empty. Too empty. Her heartbeat slowed. Not faster, slower, because instinct had already kicked in. Don't panic. Think. She stepped closer, carefully, every movement measured. Her fingers hovered over the box. Then stopped. Something wasn't right. Not danger, not obvious, but intentional, like it was meant to be seen. A message. She exhaled softly, then opened it. Inside, a single phone and a photo. Her hand tightened slightly as she picked it up. The photo showed her. From yesterday, leaving the school, angle from a distance, clear, focused, watched, her jaw set, because now, there was no doubt, they were already moving. The phone buzzed. She didn't hesitate this time. She answered. Silence. Then, You should be more careful. Jun Hyuk's voice, calm, controlled, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't crossed a line. Her grip tightened. You sent this? A faint pause. I wanted to talk. That's not how normal people talk. I'm not normal. That answer didn't surprise her. It confirmed everything. You think this scares me? She asked. No, he replied. Not you. A beat. But it should. Silence stretched, heavy, because both of them understood what that meant. Her hand moved slightly over her stomach. Instinct again. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. I already made one yesterday, he replied, and I don't repeat mistakes. That wasn't reassurance. That was warning. Footsteps approached outside the classroom, too sudden, too close. Her eyes shifted toward the door. It opened. Min-jae stood there, still, silent, watching. He didn't speak immediately, but he didn't need to, because the moment he saw the phone, the photo, her expression, he understood everything. Put him on speaker, he said. Calm, but different, colder. Amina didn't hesitate. She switched it. Silence filled the line for a second. Then, so you're faster than I expected, Jun Hyuk said. No surprise, just interest. Min-jae stepped forward slowly, his eyes never leaving the phone. You're getting bold, he said. And you're getting careless, Jun Hyuk replied. A faint pause. Because now, this wasn't indirect anymore. This was direct. Two men, two worlds, connected. I told you it wasn't over, Min-jae said. And I told you I don't rush things. A breath passed, heavy, controlled. Then let me make it clear, Min-jae continued. His voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen, but it changed, slightly, enough. You don't come near her again. Silence. Then, or what? Jun Hyuk asked. And that was the line, because some questions don't need answers. They create them. Min-jae looked at Amina briefly, then back at the phone, and for the first time, there was no restraint. No warnings next time. Quiet, final, absolute. The line went dead. Amina lowered the phone slowly. The room felt heavier, but clearer. Because now, there was no misunderstanding left. This wasn't tension anymore. This was war, and both sides had just made their first move. The line went dead, but the silence it left behind was louder than anything that had been said. Min-jae stood still, phone in Amina's hand, eyes unreadable, but his mind already moving. He won't stop, Amina said quietly. I know. No hesitation, no comfort, just truth. She exhaled slowly. He's not like the others. I know. Again. Same tone, same certainty, because men like Kang Jun Hyuk didn't back down. They escalated, and escalation always came with a cost. Across the city, Jun Hyuk lowered his phone. Slowly, deliberately. A faint smile touched his lips. Not anger, not frustration, interest, because now it was personal. Prepare the cars, he said. One of his men hesitated. Sir, for what exactly? Jun Hyuk turned slightly. For clarity. That answer didn't explain anything, but it didn't need to, because everyone in that room understood one thing. Something was about to happen. It didn't take long. It never did. The street outside the school looked normal. Students leaving, cars passing, noise, movement, life, until 3 black SUVs pulled up, not fast, not aggressive, controlled, calculated. Doors opened, men stepped out, clean, sharp, focused, not hiding anything. Because this wasn't an attack, not yet. This was presence, power, message. Inside the classroom, Amina felt it before she saw it. That shift again, that same feeling from yesterday. Her eyes moved toward the window and froze. They're here, she said. Min-jae didn't rush, didn't react visibly, but something in him settled. Stay inside, he said, She grabbed his arm. No. That stopped him. You're not going alone. A pause. Brief, but meaningful. Because this wasn't fear speaking, this was choice, and he recognized that. Then stay behind me, he said. She nodded. Outside, Jun Hyuk stepped out last. As always,